I lost everything. When my parents betrayed me, the revenge I took made me go viral, and now they're begging for forgiveness. The fall. The irony wasn't lost on me as I stared at my phone screen, watching the view counter climb by the thousands every minute. 3 million views and counting. The comments section overflowed with support, outrage on my behalf, and people sharing their own stories of family betrayal. I had become what the internet calls main character energy overnight. But the path that led me here was paved with heartbreak and betrayal from the two people I trusted most in this world, my parents. 6 months ago, I was Alex Mercer, a 25-year-old startup founder with a promising tech company valued at $4.2 million. I had built it from scratch over 3 grueling years, working 70-hour weeks and pouring every penny of my savings into developing our proprietary algorithm. We were just weeks away from closing a major funding round that would have catapulted us into the big leagues. And then, in the span of 48 hours, I lost everything. My apartment, my company, my reputation, my future. The morning it all fell apart started like any other. I woke up at 5:30 a.m., made my usual black coffee, and checked my emails. There was one from our attorney, sent at 3:17 a.m., with the subject line, "Urgent, company ownership transfer." My stomach dropped as I read it, unable to process the words in front of me. According to the documents attached, 67% of my company's shares had been transferred to a holding company called Mercer Family Investments, LLC, a company I had never heard of. I called our attorney immediately. "I'm sorry, Alex," she said, her voice grave. "The paperwork is legitimate. Your parents executed the transfer using the power of attorney document you signed." "What power of attorney?" I nearly shouted. "I never signed anything like that." But I had. 3 years ago, when I was starting the company, my father, a former corporate executive, had presented me with a stack of documents to sign. "Just standard startup paperwork, son," he'd said. "Trust me, I've been through this before. This will protect you." I trusted him. I signed without reading the fine print. That power of attorney had lain dormant for 3 years, like a snake waiting to strike. And now it had. My next call was to my parents. My hands shook as I dialed my mother's number. "Alex, sweetie," she answered brightly. "I was just about to call you. Your father and I have the most exciting news." "What have you done?" My voice came out flat, hollow. A pause. "Alex, you need to understand. This is for your own good. That company was consuming your life. You weren't making smart business decisions." "It was my company," I shouted. "My decisions to make." "And now it's our company," my father's voice cut in. He'd been listening on speaker. "We've already signed an acquisition deal with Neurotech. The money will be placed in a trust that we'll control, and you'll get a monthly allowance. You should be thanking us. We've just made you a millionaire without you having to work another day." I felt like I was drowning. Neurotech was our biggest competitor, the corporate giant we'd been fighting to disrupt. They'd been trying to buy our technology for months, but I had refused. Our mission was to make this technology accessible and affordable, not to let it be locked behind Neurotech's exorbitant paywalls. "You sold us to Neurotech? For how much?" I demanded. $8 million, my father said proudly. "More than you would have gotten with your ridiculous ethical business model." "This is business, son. We taught you better than that idealistic nonsense." 8 million. My company, my life's work, my team of 12 brilliant people who had believed in my vision, all sold for a fraction of what we could have become. And worse, sold to the very corporation that would bury our technology or price it so high that the people who needed it most would never access it. "Why?" was all I could manage to say. My mother's voice turned sickeningly sweet. "We've been worried about you, honey. All those hours working, no social life, no girlfriend. It's not healthy. Now you can enjoy life. Maybe travel, find a nice girl to settle down with." "This was never about my well-being," I cut her off. "This was about control and money." "Don't be dramatic," my father snapped. "We've set up a monthly allowance of $10,000. Most people would kill for that kind of arrangement. Your apartment lease has been terminated. We're not paying Manhattan rent when you can live in our guest house. Your car lease is being transferred to us as well. You need to come home and regroup." "I'm 25 years old," I shouted. "You can't just decide." "We can, and we have," he interrupted coldly. "The company funds have been frozen. Your corporate cards are deactivated. Your office lease terminated. It's done, Alex. Come home, and we'll discuss your future." The call ended. I sat frozen, staring at my phone in disbelief. Within hours, my company email was deactivated. By afternoon, I received notice that my corporate apartment, which had been in the company's name, had to be vacated within 48 hours. My team members were sending panicked messages. They'd all received termination notices with 2 weeks' severance. My parents had not only stolen my company, but had dismantled it entirely, selling the technology and discarding the people who had helped build it. I called every lawyer I knew. None would take my case. "Your parents had legal authority," they all said. "The documents you signed gave them that power. It would be nearly impossible to prove coercion or fraud after 3 years." By the end of that week, I was sleeping on my friend Tyler's couch, with nothing but 2 suitcases of clothes and my laptop. My bank account had $3,427 left, my personal savings outside the company. My parents had left increasingly threatening voicemails, demanding I stop this childish rebellion and come home. I blocked their numbers. The darkest moment came when Maria, our lead developer who had turned down a job at Google to work with me, called in tears. "Neurotech scrapped our accessibility features," she said. "They're repositioning everything for luxury medical spas and high-end clinics. The people we wanted to help will never get this technology now." That night, I sat on Tyler's balcony, staring at the city lights, contemplating how quickly a life could implode. I had trusted my parents unconditionally. I had believed they were proud of me, that they supported my vision. Instead, they had been waiting for the perfect moment to swoop in and take control. For the first time since I was a child, I cried, deep, racking sobs of betrayal and loss. When the tears finally stopped, something else took their place. Cold, calculated determination. My parents had always cared about 2 things above all else: money and their sterling reputation in their wealthy social circle. They'd built their identities around being the perfect, successful, enviable family. My father, the respected businessman. My mother, the philanthropist and perfect society wife. If they had taken everything from me, I would take the one thing they valued most: their reputation. And so began my plan for revenge. A plan that would require patience, cunning, and a deep understanding of the digital world my parents had never fully grasped. The plan. The first step was survival. I needed income, a place to live, and time to execute my plan. I swallowed my pride and took a job as a barista at an upscale coffee shop in the financial district. The pay was minimal, but the tips were good. And more importantly, I could eavesdrop on conversations from the very type of executives and investors my parents socialized with. I found a tiny studio apartment in Brooklyn that I could just afford, sharing with another roommate who worked nights while I worked days. It wasn't much, but it gave me a base of operations. Each night after my shift, I worked on phase 1 of my plan, documentation. I gathered every email, text message, and recorded phone call from the past 3 years. I had always been meticulous about backup, and now that obsession would pay off. I organized evidence showing how my company had been developing affordable medical monitoring technology for underserved communities, and how my parents and neurotech had killed that mission for profit. But documentation alone wouldn't be enough. To truly hurt my parents, I needed to understand their world better than they did themselves. So I created new social media accounts under a pseudonym and began infiltrating the online spaces where their social circle gathered. Facebook groups for their country club, Instagram hashtags for their charity events, Twitter conversations about their business associates. I became a digital ghost, observing everything, collecting information about their relationships, their business deals, their social standing. What I discovered shocked even me. My father, the paragon of business ethics in public, had been involved in multiple borderline illegal deals. My mother, who chaired 3 different children's charities, had been embezzling funds for years to support her shopping addiction. They had built their reputation on carefully constructed lies. 3 months into my plan, an unexpected opportunity arose. My coffee shop was catering a tech conference, and one of the speakers was none other than Eliza Chen, the famous tech whistleblower who had exposed corporate corruption at 3 major companies and had become a TikTok sensation with her advocacy for ethical technology. I made sure to serve her personally, and when I saw her alone during a break, I approached her. "Ms. Chen, I'm Alex Mercer. I founded Mercer Tech before it was acquired by Neurotech. I think I have a story you might be interested in." Her eyes narrowed with recognition. The accessibility algorithm that mysteriously disappeared after acquisition? I've been trying to figure out what happened there. We agreed to meet after the conference. I brought my documentation and she brought her skepticism, which melted away as I showed her email after email proving what had happened. "This isn't just about you and your parents," she said finally. "This is about a systemic problem in tech acquisitions. Companies buy promising startups with important social missions, strip the technology, and repurpose it for luxury markets. It happens all the time, but rarely do we get such clear documentation." Eliza proposed a collaboration. She would help me tell my story, not as a personal vendetta, but as a cautionary tale about ethics in technology and the dangers of predatory acquisitions. This approach was perfect. It would expose my parents while maintaining the moral high ground. For the next month, Eliza and I worked together creating a comprehensive exposé. We interviewed former team members, gathered additional documentation from Neurotech insiders, and crafted a narrative that was impossible to dismiss as merely personal grievance. The final touch was the format. Eliza had built her reputation through social media storytelling, breaking complex scandals into compelling, bite-sized content that could go viral while still conveying the seriousness of the issues. We would use the same approach. "Are you ready for this?" she asked me the night before our planned release. "Once we put this out, there's no going back. Your parents will know it was you. They'll come after you with everything they have." I thought about the past months, sleeping on a mattress on the floor, working 60-hour weeks between the coffee shop and this project, eating ramen to save every penny. I thought about Maria and the rest of my team who had lost their jobs. I thought about the patients who would never benefit from our technology. "I'm ready," I said. "Let's do this. The revenge." Our expose launched on a Wednesday morning at precisely 9 o'clock a.m., the time when my parents always had their breakfast while scrolling through social media. The timing was deliberate. I wanted them to see it before their friends did. The first post was simple, a TikTok video of me sitting in my sparse apartment looking directly into the camera. My name is Alex Mercer. 6 months ago, I was the CEO of a $4.2 million tech startup creating affordable medical monitoring technology. Today, I'm a barista living in a shared studio apartment. This is the story of how my parents legally stole my company, sold it to the highest bidder, and destroyed technology that could have helped thousands of people. The video ended with a cliffhanger, directing viewers to the next part of the series. Eliza posted it simultaneously on her accounts, with her 2.7 million followers providing the initial boost we needed. Within an hour, it had 50,000 views. By lunchtime, 350,000. By dinner, it had crossed the million mark and was being picked up by tech blogs and news outlets. Parts 2 through 5 dropped every 3 hours, each revealing more details. The fraudulent power of attorney, the secret negotiations with neurotech, the dismantling of our accessibility features, and interviews with former team members about the technology that had been buried. Part 6 was the most damaging, documentation of my parents' other ethical breaches, including my mother's charity embezzlement and my father's borderline illegal business practices. We were careful to present only verifiable facts, with documentation linked in a comprehensive website we had built. The final video was simple yet devastating. It showed the actual medical monitoring device we had created, with testimony from patients in our pilot program who had benefited from it, patients who could no longer afford the technology now that neurotech had repositioned it for luxury markets. This isn't just about me, I concluded. It's about what happens when profit is prioritized over people. When technology that could help everyone is restricted to only those who can pay premium prices. And when the people you trust most in the world betray that trust for money. The series exploded online. Mercer tech scandal trended nationwide. Tech forums were ablaze with discussions. News outlets picked up the story, with headlines like "Tech Founder Betrayed by Parents in Corporate Takeover" and "How a Life-Saving Technology Was Buried for Profit." But the most powerful response came from ordinary people who shared their own stories of family betrayal, corporate corruption, and medical technology priced out of their reach. Our expose had touched a nerve in the cultural zeitgeist, becoming more than just my personal revenge. It had become a movement. My phone rang at 10:47 p.m. that night. My father's number. I let it go to voicemail. "Alexander," his voice was tight with controlled rage, "take down those videos immediately. You're making a spectacle of yourself and damaging this family's reputation with your distorted version of events. Call me back now." My mother texted minutes later, "Please stop this, Alex. People are calling us. Your father is getting calls from business associates. This isn't helping anyone." I didn't respond to either message. By morning, the full series had accumulated over 7 million views across platforms. Our website had crashed twice from traffic. 3 major news networks had requested interviews. And most satisfyingly, neurotech's stock had dropped 6% at market open as investors questioned the ethics of their acquisition practices. My parents escalated their attempts to reach me. Calls, texts, emails, first angry, then threatening, finally desperate. They sent a cease and desist letter through their attorney, which we promptly published online with legal annotations explaining why their threats were baseless. The turning point came on day 3, when my mother's charity announced an emergency board meeting to discuss recent allegations. By evening, She had been removed from all 3 charity boards she chaired. My father's golf club, the exclusive sanctuary where he conducted much of his networking, issued a statement that his membership was under review. Their carefully constructed social world was collapsing around them. On day 5, I received a text from a number I didn't recognize. "It's Dad. They're freezing our accounts. The FBI is looking into the charity finances. Please call me. We can fix this." They had created burner phones to reach me after I blocked their regular numbers. I saved the contact, but didn't respond. By the end of the week, our series had been viewed over 15 million times. I had done interviews with 2 major networks, carefully framing the story not as family drama, but as a case study in corporate ethics and technology accessibility. Eliza and I had been invited to speak at 3 major tech conferences about ethical entrepreneurship and whistleblowing. Then came the most unexpected development. Former neurotech employees began reaching out, offering internal documents showing that my parents' deal had been part of a larger pattern of predatory acquisitions. A class action lawsuit was being formed by former employees of acquired companies. The revenge I had planned had grown far beyond what I had imagined. It wasn't just about exposing my parents anymore. It had sparked a genuine movement for accountability in the tech industry. 10 days after our initial post, I received an email from Neurotech's new crisis management team. They wanted to meet to discuss potential remediation efforts, including the reinstatement of the accessibility program. Their stock had dropped 22% and continued falling. The same day, I received a handwritten letter delivered to my apartment. My mother's elegant script filled 3 pages with tearful apologies, explanations, and pleas for reconciliation. "We never meant to hurt you," she wrote. "We thought we were helping. Please, Alex. Our lives are falling apart. Your father can't sleep. I'm taking anxiety medication. Just talk to us." I placed the letter in a folder with all their other communications, evidence, documentation, just as they had taught me to do in business. 2 weeks after our series launched, a major tech publication ran a feature story titled "The Mercer Tech Scandal: How One Founder's Revenge Changed Tech Industry Accountability." The article ended with a question that perfectly captured what this had become. What started as a family betrayal may end up being the catalyst for long-overdue reform in how technology companies handle acquisitions and social responsibility. The question now is, will the industry learn from the Mercer family's very public implosion? The aftermath. 3 months after our exposé went viral, I sat in a sleek conference room on the 47th floor of a Manhattan skyscraper. Across from me sat the new CEO of Neurotech, flanked by their attorneys and PR team. Next to me was Eliza, along with our own legal counsel, paid for by the advance on a book deal we had signed to tell the complete story of the Mercer Tech scandal. "We want to make this right," Neurotech's CEO said, sliding a document across the table. "We're prepared to spin off your original technology into a new public benefit corporation with you as CEO. Full creative control, dedicated funding for 5 years, and a mandate to create affordable versions for underserved markets." I studied his face, looking for deception. All I saw was the desperate calculation of a company trying to salvage its plummeting stock price and devastated public image. "And my team?" I asked. "The 12 people who were terminated? First right of refusal to rejoin, with increased salaries and equity compensation." I glanced at our attorney, who gave a slight nod. The terms were even better than we had hoped for. "One more condition," I said. "I want a public statement acknowledging that the original acquisition was conducted unethically and that my parents acted without my knowledge or consent." The PR director winced, but nodded. We can work with that language. As we left the meeting, Eliza nudged my shoulder. So, multimillionaire CEO again by 26. Not bad for a guy who was making lattes 3 months ago. I laughed, but it felt hollow. The victory was substantial. We had rescued the technology, secured its future for those who needed it most, and my former team would get their jobs back with better compensation. But the cost had been my family. My parents' lives had indeed imploded, just as I had planned. My father had been forced to resign from his executive position after his business partners distanced themselves from the scandal. My mother had become a pariah in their social circle, uninvited from the charity galas and luncheons that had defined her identity. Their country club membership had been revoked. Former friends crossed the street to avoid them. They had continued their desperate attempts to contact me, through mutual acquaintances, through letters, even through my former landlord. Each message more desperate than the last. I had ignored them all until last week, when I received news that my mother had been hospitalized for a panic attack. The doctor who called suggested that seeing me might help her recovery. So here I was, standing outside their home, not the mansion I had grown up in, but a much smaller house in a less prestigious neighborhood. They had been forced to downsize after the financial fallout of the scandal. My father opened the door. He had aged a decade in 6 months, hair grayer, posture stooped, dark circles under his eyes. "Alex," he whispered, as though afraid speaking too loudly would make me disappear. "You came." I nodded stiffly. "How is she?" "Better, resting upstairs. She'll be so happy you're here." He stepped aside to let me in, and I entered the unfamiliar house filled with familiar furniture, the remnants of their previous life, crowded into a space too small to contain them properly. We sat in uncomfortable silence in the living room, the weight of everything between us making conversation impossible. Finally, he spoke, his voice cracking. "I know sorry isn't enough. What we did, there's no excuse. We thought we were protecting you from yourself. We were wrong, terribly wrong." I studied him, this broken version of the imperious man who had controlled my life for so long. "You didn't want to protect me. You wanted to control me and my success. You couldn't stand that I had built something valuable without following your playbook." He didn't deny it. "Pride," he said simply. "Terrible pride. And fear, too. Your company was growing so fast, with such unconventional methods. I convinced your mother it was unstable, that you would lose everything if we didn't intervene." He looked up, eyes hollow. "Now we've lost everything instead." "Not everything," came my mother's voice from the doorway. She looked frail, leaning against the doorframe in a bathrobe despite it being afternoon. "We still have a chance to ask for forgiveness." I didn't rush to embrace her, though part of me wanted to. The well of hurt was still too deep. "I came because your doctor called," I said evenly. "Not because I've forgiven you." She nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. "We understand. We don't deserve forgiveness. But Alex, we are so proud of what you've done. Not just the success, but standing up for what's right, even when it was against us." She tried to smile through her tears. "You're stronger than either of us ever was." Something twisted in my chest, a complicated tangle of vindication, lingering anger, and a small, unwelcome tendril of compassion. "My new company launches next month," I said after a long pause. "The technology will be available to the patients who need it, at prices they can afford." My father nodded. "We've been following the news. It's It's extraordinary what you've accomplished. An uncomfortable silence fell again. Will we? My mother began hesitantly. Will we ever be part of your life again? In any capacity? I stood up, suddenly needing space. I don't know. That's the honest answer. What you did broke something fundamental between us. I'm not sure it can be repaired. Their faces fell, but they nodded in understanding. But, I continued, surprising myself, I'm willing to try family counseling, once a month with a therapist. If it goes nowhere, it goes nowhere, but I'm willing to try. The hope that bloomed on their faces was almost painful to witness. As I left their house that day, I felt strangely empty. The revenge that had consumed me for months had succeeded beyond my wildest expectations. I had regained everything I had lost and more: my company, my team, increased funding, and a platform to make real change in the industry. My parents had lost everything that mattered to them: their social standing, their financial security, and most importantly, their relationship with me. I had won, completely and utterly. Yet victory tasted different than I had imagined. Walking to my car, a modest electric vehicle I had purchased with my book advance, I checked my phone. A text from Maria. First prototype of the new model passed all tests. We're back in business, boss. Next to it was a notification from TikTok. Someone had stitched our original expose video with their own story of standing up to corporate corruption, inspired by our campaign. The hashtag Mercer Effect was trending again, used now to describe whistleblowing that led to positive industry change. The revenge I had planned had transformed into something I never expected. A legacy, not of destruction, but of reform. As I drove away from my parents' home, I realized that the viral storm I had created had changed everything, including me. 6 months ago, I had wanted nothing more than to destroy my parents as they had destroyed me. Now, I wasn't sure what I wanted from them, if anything. But I did know what I wanted for myself: to build something meaningful from the ashes of betrayal, to ensure that the public spotlight that had made me go viral would illuminate not just a personal vendetta, but a path toward greater accountability in the tech world. Maybe that was the best revenge of all. Not just reclaiming what was taken from me, but transforming it into something bigger than either my parents or I had ever imagined. As for forgiveness, that remained an open question, one I wasn't ready to answer just yet. But for the first time since that fateful morning, when I received the email that changed everything, I could imagine a future where the answer might not be a definitive never. And that, perhaps, was progress enough for now.